In the last few weeks, veteran drivers like Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin have talked about a lack of respect in the garage and even admitted they had tried to talk with younger drivers about it, but those words had fallen on deaf ears, effectively blaming the youth for the problem. This weekend at Circuit of the Americas, Bubba Wallace offered a very different opinion on the subject, directly placing blame on the veterans for the disrespect issues. Interestingly, his perspective is similar to many of the younger drivers who don't think they are the problem, but it's a combination of things that's amplified the aggression levels across NASCAR. During that first conversation at Atlanta around the topic of lack of respect, the veterans were outspoken.
That's the key part. Now you're going down the right path, is we have completely lost any sense of respect in the garage area between drivers at all. And that's where the problem lies, is nobody gives two about anybody else. And it's just a problem where everybody takes advantage of everybody as much as they can. We're all selfish, granted, but there was an etiquette that once did live here.
That is something you would expect. They are the carriers of the torch from the racers before. They know the history of the sport and the perceived amount of respect paid to each other on the track. Their argument was heard first. But to be fair, the younger drivers, and in this case we're classifying a younger driver as someone with 5 or fewer full-time years of Cup experience, should also have their voices heard. This weekend at COTA, Bubba Wallace stepped forward and spoke loud and clear when asked about the source of the lack of respect in the garage. The 2311 racing driver didn't hesitate in his response.
It's from the top down. So we talk about it's a new age, but you can't even talk to some of the guys that have been here for a long time. So it's just lack of respect from the top down. So that's how it's always been. And I think, who was it? Todd. I talked about, that's how the younger generation's kind of always raced now. It's been cutthroat.
Here's what Gilliland had to say.
It is interesting. I think that's what a lot of the guys, the veterans of the sport, have said, that the respect has kind of gone away. And I guess for me, it's always been just super hard beating doors racing of late models, ARCA, K&N, trucks at Martinsville. That's how we've always had to race. So I don't know if it's gone away or if it's just how the younger guys have raced. I don't know. It's not fun at times, but it's kind of what we've just grown up doing.
Gilliland's remarks are certainly eye-opening. Wallace shared his own personal Kyle Busch story that revealed the difference in generations.
I know Kyle and I have had our run-ins going back to Watkins Glen and 18. And he talked, he was like, I caught you a couple races ago at Texas. And he's like, you ever heard of the Mark Martin rule? And I'm like, what's that? He's like, when I catch you, you lay over. I'm like, no, I don't race like that. You get on the inside of me, you can get there. But, it's just a total different style of racing that, we both, it's kind of like button heads, right? So it's, I agree with both sides. There's no respect in the garage. But I try to race everybody with respect. I know some guys just go out here and run you up the track or run you off the track. And if I do that, it's by mistake. It's not by design. But it's from the top down.
Chase Briscoe, who's been charged with being aggressive on multiple occasions, including on the Indy Road Course with Denny Hamlin in 2021 and the Bristol Dirt with Tyler Reddick last year, had some interesting thoughts of his own and sided with his younger counterparts.
I think now just you grew up and there's all these feeder series and you're just jumping series to series, so you don't really respect the car. And if you haven't had respect your whole career, why would it change once you get to here? And just how you have to race now, it's so cutthroat. Before it was a lot easier to pass. You had comers and goers, and track position was obviously important, but it wasn't near as important as it is today, where now, you can't even allow anybody to get by you because it takes you 30 laps to get back by them. So you have to race so cutthroat that a lot of that respect goes out the window right there, just because of how hard you have to race now. So I think it's just got to where there's nobody really enforcing it. If you knew if you got into the guy, if you were going to get a black eye, then you probably wouldn't run in there and hit him, right? So when you lose guys like Tony Stewart and guys like that weren't afraid to come down there and punch you in the mouth, there's no consequence at that point, right? So I think there's a lot of guys that definitely know that, so they just go in there and know there's not going to be a consequence. And a lot of guys, when they have an issue, they say, "Oh, we're going to go talk about it." Nobody ever talks about it, so it just goes under the rug, and they go to the next one, and it happens again and again. So I think there's a few guys in the sport that definitely have a lot of respect. I've had run-ins before, but even Bristol, with Reddick, I was fully expecting to get punched in the mouth, and I was willing to accept that because I deserved it. But you just don't really see that anymore. So I think if you had that, I think there'd be a lot more respect.
It's impossible to attribute the lack of respect in the garage to one thing. As detailed, it's a multitude of things. Corey LaJoie, who watched his father's career and how drivers raced each other back then, offered his own intriguing take, and one that also has plenty of merit.
Yeah, it's just a progression of the sport.
Right.
I think that the cars were safer because back in, Kyle's point, he brought up guys like Mark Martin, Tony Stewart, guys, started racing in the mid-'80s to early '90s, all the way through, a decade ago. You had to legitimately think about somebody's well-being if you wrecked them.
Right.
If you wreck somebody, that might be the last time you ever saw them. If they hit the wall in Texas at 195 miles an hour with no safer barriers, like their eggs are scrambled. So there's not that. I mean, people want to say that cars aren't safe, this and that. They're safe enough to where you can wreck somebody and not worry about their well-being. So that's where we're at. I think as you see driver injuries go down, the respect level obviously goes down too, because if you wreck somebody intentionally and you're not worried about that actually hurting that person, you're just worried about that person's particular day not having a good result.
The lack of respect is an issue that's not going away anytime soon. The veterans believe they can't talk to the youth, and the youth feel like the veterans don't fully understand their issues and aren't eager to listen to them and learn more. Sounds like a good old-fashioned sibling dispute. Sometimes, in those cases, the parent has had enough, intervenes, lays down the law, and resets the situation. Is this one of those times?